This is an important meeting, and this is an important webinar from my perspective. All the work that I do in higher education, one of the things that you constantly hear is the problems with getting research going in India. And I think that in today's session, I'm particularly excited because I believe that there's a big shift happening in the way research is going to be conducted and carried out in the country. And that this could be our moment to actually start punching above our weight, which has been always a problem. So thank you everyone for making time on a Tuesday evening. I know the middle of the week can be very full, and I hope that this hour leaves you with an idea or two worth carrying into the rest of the week. I've particularly benefited from learning about ANRF and what Shiv is trying to do at ANRF in the universities that I've been involved in. And I thought that it would be helpful to university administrators, academics, to learn how they can leverage some of the exciting stuff that is happening in the country today, and particularly with ANRF. So I'm genuinely excited about this conversation because I've personally benefited from learning about the ANRF, the institutions I'm involved in, and I think Shiv also is somebody who conveys what he is trying to do in his leadership role in a very engaging manner. So it's great to have you with us. Shiv obviously has had a very interesting journey, and I just take a minute to quickly introduce him. He's the chief executive of the Anusandhan National Research Foundation, which is India's apex research body. You can go through his formal bio. It's very impressive, but a quick version of it is that he was JEE rank 3 in 1989. Shiv, there were at least 1,000 ranks between you and me in JEE, a few years apart. Shiv chose IIT Madras and computer science, and then went to Ohio State for his master's and PhD, where he post which he was actually a tenured professor at RPI, the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in New York. Some of you may have heard, very preeminent engineering and technology institute. And then brought all of that home. He went to industry, spent many years with IBM Research, then GE, where he built a new business in mobility and solar, and then Microsoft, where he served as the chief technology officer for the energy industry vertical across Asia. So as you can see, he has worn all possible research hats, and therefore comes from a very strong sense of real world experience. And also a lot of credibility given his credentials and the organizations and the quality of places he's worked with. Not surprisingly, across these 30 years, he's written more than 200 papers, hold 35 patents, and he's really seen the world from every seat, as a student, as a professor, as a scientist, and as an industry leader, and now as a national, international leader. What doesn't come in the official bio, which I was fascinated by, is that he's a devoted Carnatic music enthusiast and actually a violinist by training. And he's built a learning archive for Carnatic music simply to keep his passion alive and to help fellow learners. I think it also is very revealing because it suggests that he's somebody who's very patient and takes a long view on whatever he takes on. And I think he particularly is taking a long view in his leadership of ANRF, though he's doing things very quickly. So I'm very curious to hear him say what he has to say. So Dr. Shiv Kumar Kalyanaraman, very, very warm welcome to J3 Dialogues, and we are very glad to have you with us. Shiv, I think what I'd like to do is I've heard you talk very, very articulately about research and the connection of research to a growing economy, to becoming a Viksit Bharat in India. And so I'd like you to lead it off by sharing some of your own thoughts with us, setting the context of where India's research is and where it needs to go. And then I will ask you some questions on behalf of our viewers and listeners today. So over to you, Shiv.
First, Pramath, to you and your colleagues, it's wonderful to be on the show with you, and I've been a great admirer of everything you've done. I mean, of course, leading with ISB and Ashoka and so on, and we have a lot to learn from you on how to do these things. So thank you for the generous introduction. So coming to your question, so I think there's just a working understanding of research that I carry, which is the very long run, the nation's capability, and as we want to become Viksit Bharat, which means a developed country, we need to have quite a diverse economy, which is going to be driven by a wide range of entities in the private sector. That's going to be not just the current mix of entities, but looking more like a mix that some of the countries we would like to compare with, say the United States, right? So technology-driven companies. So how do we move from a situation where we are today to where we have technology-driven companies and then technology-led companies and really truly intrinsically technology companies, and a good fraction of our economy and economic growth being driven by that. And then, as we all know that the markets like US continue to be a vibrant place from economic growth because it's driven by a continuous stream of innovation and flexible labor markets and good institutional capabilities. And given that, we think that research is intrinsic to all of these because that's the ultimate expression of human capital. And, and of course, it might be in a smaller section of society where research-driven innovation-driven companies, companies-driven economies, and enough hotspots around the country where this is done. So I think that's the working understanding we have. Therefore, we need to seed enough such hotspots across the country and the relationships between academia and industry and get really a collaborative and vibrant ecosystem going. So that's the general point of view I'd like to start with.
So when you've said before as well that research is intrinsic to all of us and that it's a deeply human affair is what you said somewhere else, and you're echoing that today. So what do you really mean by that? And why does it matter today for India to think about this as an important thing?
See, so it's been a personal experience of mine that, research is to some extent deeply within all of that. It's just a matter that only some of us have been able to awaken that first principles thinking that we apply to problems that we face. If you look at a classic researcher, he or she would attack or approach problems. Some of them would be more fundamental or frontier problems. Some of them would be use-inspired problems. They may do basic research. Some might want to do applied research. Some might want to do translational research. But some of these, I think more as these are problems to be solved at different levels of maturity. And to crack those problems, you would have to think in first principles. You have to think systematically. You have to think. You have to overcome, obstacles primarily of the mind and get over them, and synthesize a body of knowledge. Maybe trace clues. The word Anusandahan also means somebody who is a seeker who goes finding. Who gets to the root cause of something and so on and so forth. Right? So these are all aspects which I feel. It is not distinct from even meditation. So if one does meditation, they have the ability to do research. Right? So it's just the ability to convert that into a sequence of thought, a sequence of first principle thinking. And so now the more of us who express that, I mean, and you mentioned arts such as violin or any other things, right? So there also we have an extempore way of doing things. We also learn things from first principles and so on and so forth. So it's just that we choose not to do that after some time. We start to think in terms of analogies and, just take for granted what somebody else is saying, or we chant mantras. And my dad once told me that if you chant something long enough, you start believing in it. So you mistake what you're believing in from a fundamental root cause understanding, right? So that's why I feel research is intrinsic in us. We just need to choose to open up to it.
So is the point about intrinsic to the human existence, as well as this? You keep emphasizing this first principles idea. Uh, is that are you implicitly also encouraging us all here to think more originally and think of be more creative and be more uh, distinctive in problems that we work on, and rather than work on issues that others have already worked on, or it's a copycat or an analogy? Is that implicit in what you're saying?
Absolutely. I think, in fact, in the world of AI, it's, I guess, even more important for us to emphasize our humanness. And, I think the word Anusandhan, therefore, it implies several things. It implies meditation, it implies humanness, and it's an intrinsic, it implies that it's all intrinsic in us, and it's just that we have to let it out. And I feel that in the world of AI, the more we express our humanness, that becomes more important. And the first principles and all is part of it.
So this is getting into something that is not so original, because everybody talks about this, which is the fact that our research in India, it has a very large volume, but we are still not really able to translate that into impact on the ground, in terms of innovations and so on. And I think somewhere you are trying to attack that problem, right? So how do you see closing that distance through what ANRF is trying to do and what you're trying to do?
I think, look, I think we do have a long way to go. But that said, quantity always tends to precede quality in other fields and other areas as well. So the fact that we have a starting point of quantity is a good starting point. We have a lot of engineers that and scientists that we do produce, but then how do we raise the quality bar on that at every individual level? Second is, how do we get people to work together? In teams, as you know, Pranav, and anything that we do that is substantial, we have to work together as a team and be comfortable in our skins in that. So collaboration for success, or collaboration for impact, I think these are the two things that I keep in my mind. And I feel that ultimately, more investment in research is is an effect of better research productivity. And better research productivity comes from, I think the simplest path to that is better collaboration, right? So that is the working hypothesis we have: collaboration for impact, which means each individual needs to focus a lot more impact, and teams need to focus on impact, and collaboration is as a means to that end. And together you get higher productivity.
And again, in that idea of collaboration, are you also thinking of working on the edges and interdisciplinarity, across collaboration across disciplines, right?
Yeah. I think well said, Pranav. I think it is one is collaboration across individuals. I mean, collaborate with the person next door to you. That is one thing. Second is collaboration across disciplines, between departments, different disciplines, because many of the great discoveries, a lot of innovative things tend to happen at those interdisciplinary boundaries. And third is collaboration across institutions, whether industry, academia, or labs and academia, etc., startups, and so on. I think the more sort of linkages that happen, then the sort of baton race of, you have fundamental discoveries, frontier discoveries, which get translated into applied into that probability of that happening, or the technology diffusion probability is increased.
So I want to shift from sort of painting the context and how you are thinking about it to literally laying it out for folks who are attending today, because several of them talked to me before they joined, and some of them are not fully aware of how they can take advantage of what you're trying to do with ANRF. Uh, this is not to say that you've gone out and really spread the message out, so congratulations on that. I think the message is landing when once folks are hearing about what the possibilities are. But I'd like to use a bulk of the time now to really hear from you. How do different stakeholders in this space take advantage of what you have to offer, and what you are trying to do? And I think this would therefore mean for you to tell us a bit about what are the different, and there are multiple programs like you have. So while all of this information is available on the web and people can download stuff and so on, I think sometimes it just sticks better when somebody talks about them, gives examples, and you've already done many calls and got really done many awards. So if you can talk about, first, if I'm an institution in India, if I'm a university, or say I'm a NGO or a think tank working on healthcare, how should I think about the opportunity that ANRF is providing?
So first, Pramod, it's an excellent question. And ANRF comes, the origins of ANRF are from the National Education Policy. In fact, in the NEP 2020, one of the chapters, chapter 17, is on National Research Foundation. If you read that chapter, it gives you what the original thinkers were thinking about ANRF. The problems it was trying to solve was that funding and for research was quite fragmented, and that's number one. Second, was it was not having a long enough duration, or it was also very stop-start in nature, and interdisciplinary funding was falling through the cracks. Right, these were the original challenges that ANRF as an institution was moved to. Then, as the institution came into being, or the cabinet had discussed this, it was set up as an apex organization across all stakeholders. And but we have academia and the not-for-profit labs and other entities you mentioned are core stakeholders of ANRF. Right, so we have a special mandate, especially for academia, and broadening the distribution of excellence in research in academia. So, almost all our programs, any academic institution, whether it's a public institution, centrally funded, or state institution, or a private institution, you can all apply for all our programs, right? And typically we expect our principal investigators to be, essentially full-time members of your organization. So we not a contract staff and so on, but otherwise the full-time members of your institution, like faculty members and so on, they can all apply for grants and so on. Similarly, if you are a national lab, like there are about 300 odd national labs, as well as there are research institutions that are recognized by DSIR, or DSIR CSIRO specifically. These entities, which are not-for-profit entities, they can apply as well. Section 8 companies, in some cases, we also allow Section 8 companies and NGOs to apply. That becomes a bit of case-by-case basis in different programs. So all our programs are open for all of academia. That's the short answer.
Who cannot apply? Are there?
So, look, I think if you are just a contract faculty and so on at the moment, that's one. Second is, currently we do expect most of our application to have PhDs, and if you're holding a PhD or an MD and so on, sometimes depending upon the nature of the program, we say you need to have a PhD in the sciences and technologies and so on. In fact, one of our programs, the Convergence Centers for Humanity, Social Sciences, Meeting, Science and Technology, there in fact, humanities, social sciences, we wanted to lead. So, if you're a management school or if you're like a policy institution or if you're a humanities, social sciences, we want you to be a faculty or a lead institution in that case. Right? So some we provide more prominence to that, but most are faculty or full-time research staff in these institutions. You could also be a research professor, and also we are supportive of OCI/PIO who hold full-time faculty positions in these institutions, and I want to re-emphasize that we have a level playing field between public as well as private
That's a
universities
very,
and institutions.
yeah, that's a very important point. I just want to re-emphasize that if that at least there was a perception earlier that the grants and the funding were biased towards more of the public in the same usual set of suspects. But I think what I have also felt from being part of the private sector, if you will, that what you have on offer is really a level playing field for everyone.
Correct.
In fact, if you are interested in research, you are much better off just applying rather than worrying about.
Yeah, apply and try and then figure it out. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I would say that what do they call it? Sort of there are these biases, right? So biases cut both ways. Okay. So we welcome applications, but at the same time, taking into account some of these biases, we are broadening out some of our committees and so on to have more representation of institutions and so on, and including institutions of various kinds as well as so on underrepresented institutions and so on, and geographically distributed and things like that, and limiting the participation of any single institutions in committees so that those sorts of biases are reduced. So we take active care on those matters as well. But overall, we are focused on quality, merit, and so on. But and we are trying to provide more capacity building in other ways as well.
So, in terms of an institution, at least one of the things we have done in some of the institutions that I'm part of is to energize our research officers and the deans of researchers to say, look, be the connector between ANRF and our faculty, because however much you try, there is always a gap in understanding or awareness of individuals. So I think one of the roles, would you agree that the institutions can play is
Absolutely.
spread the message more amongst individual faculty, HODs, and researchers?
No, absolutely. I would strongly urge the deans and so on to be in close touch with us, especially the Dean of Research and Innovation, or what you call it in your institution. In fact, we also have some more social media groups like WhatsApp groups of deans of research, and if there are specific, if you have a research active institution and you're getting some funding from us and so on, please reach out to us. We are having groups of them, as well as we are establishing nodal officers who may be registrars or other way, somebody who handles finance and so on. We have groups of them as well. So we're using that to help our principal investigators in across multiple institutions so that we can ease the life of principal investigators, because there are several artifacts of the past that still linger with us, which we are trying to iron out as we go forward. When I was a faculty member in the US, I didn't bother about UC, SE, and all these interesting things, utilization certificate and so on. But in India, we seem to be burdening our principal investigators with all of this. So we are trying to set up nodal officers in different institutions who can help, and they're empowered, to help out the investigators in many of these administrative matters.
And what about you briefly mentioned fields, but even in things like humanities and social sciences, people can apply. This is not limited just to STEM fields, right?
So our mandate in ANRF is at the intersection of humanities, social sciences with science and technology. We don't have a separate HSS alone mandate. So we have a mandate that cuts across with science and technology. So in some of our flagship programs like our ARG Advanced Research Grant or PMECRG Early Career Research Grant program, we have a track we call QSS, Quantitative Social Sciences. That's one of the tracks that we have. So in fact, we don't get enough proposals there. So I would encourage more people to apply on those fronts. And we also there's two other things I'd like to mention. We have Centers of Excellence program, what we call Convergence Center of Excellence. These are very selective things that we do, but this year, we have commissioned 10 of them at a non-trivial amount of funding with each of them. They again are looking at the intersection of HNSS with science and technology. So that's a new initiative that we've been driving. Third, I'd like to mention is that in our mission mode programs, there are opportunities there as well. We have societal innovation programs where we are asking for leapfrog demonstrators. So that's an excellent opportunity for a combination of talent from HNSS to come together with science and technology to go solve problems together, because we do need all those skill sets too. So we want to have a more of a mindset of problem solving. Okay, whether those problem solving are for societal benefit, economic benefit, or others. Those are all our mission mode programs. And then at the foundation layer, we support basic sciences, frontier research. We support applied or use-inspired research as well. And we support translation research. All of these are important for us. We invest in all of them. And of course, HNSS is the intersection of quantitative, or HNSS is the intersection of science.
So, Shiv, do I need to wait for ANRF to put out a call, or I can just apply if I see a match between what you are doing or one of your mission mode projects?
No, that's a very good question. So we put out a calendar of some of our recurring programs at the beginning of the year. For example, in January, we put out a calendar of some of our flagship recurring programs, like our fellowship programs, the ARG, which is our Advanced Research Grant, the Early Career Research Grant, and some others. So some of the recurring programs, we put out a calendar so people can even plan. But most of our programs are on a calendar. So we put out a call on the date, which I have mentioned there. And then it would have a period for submission of proposals, and then the call will close. We don't keep proposal calls open indefinitely. We typically have a window of opportunity for specific calls, because then we can take all the proposals that come in that call, okay, and then evaluate them and make decisions on selections and decisions on how to fund them. But the good news is that these are recurring or repeating programs. But we are also systematically launching what we call sector-based programs or mission mode programs in different sectors. And that, I can't tell you in advance what will be the programs and when I'll launch them. Those are coming out. So it's always good to track us on social media and so on. We are very chatty on social media, and we keep telling people what we're up to. So that will give a fair opportunity for new calls. And even if you miss a call, no problem. There'll be we don't just do a call once off. We'll probably do it 2-3 times in subsequent. Some of our calls are twice a year. Some of our calls are once a year, but we do it 3-4 times. No, mission mode programs, we do it that way. If something is a longer lived mission mode program, we may do it for many years as well. So that's the general milieu.
Right. So the best way to connect is to keep track of the different calls that are being made, some of which we will know in advance, most of which we will know in advance over a window of time, and that should give us enough runway to prepare and put in bids, put in proposals.
Yeah, the bread and butter programs are all recurring. So those, and that's where we put in a good amount of our funding as well. So that, there's a good visibility of that. But the other ones, they keep coming around. And now that we've set up a menu of options, so we'll be repeating some of those a few times as well at different times in the year. So I think it's good to follow us broadly. But we will also be launching more mission, more programs in other spaces over time.
And Shiv, just to pick up the thread on something else that we talked about. So if I'm a humanities professor, and it might not fit directly to the mission, if there is an idea I have where I can partner with a computer scientist or a physicist, And that really then makes me, it's not trying to game the system, but on the other hand, all of us have ideas that require some technical collaboration. And that would make me much more eligible to sort of fit into the sweet spot of what you're trying to do, correct?
Yeah, I mean, every specific program may have a bit of eligibility criteria, but modulo that, we want to encourage more interdisciplinary collaborations. So genuine interdisciplinary collaboration where there's a clarity of role between different, what we call PIs, principal investigators, and co-PIs. We welcome proposals. In fact, just to give you a sense, in our ARG program, we made about 1,270 odd awards, but we had over 2,000 PIs and co-PIs. So we had a considerable amount of collaboration in those programs as well. So we are starting to see the small collaborations shape up, and we'd like to use our funding as a catalyst to drive some of these things.
So I'm just trying to pick up some questions from the audience as well, Shiv. We have a question from Gauri Divan. She's saying, like, as someone who does research through a not-profit in India, some queries on our roadblocks for applying to grants at ICMR has been on the limitation on salaries of lead investigators. The assumptions being that individuals have full-time government job. Will there be a more flexible salary structure which allows independent organizations to support talent in the context of civil society organizations? And this is another very specific question, but I think these are pertinent questions. That is there a possibility of supporting PhDs within a proposal with partners universities, since this is another way to keep the talent within the civil society organization?
Okay, so multiple questions wrapped in one. So
Yes.
let's say as I said, our principal investigator has to be a full-time member of that institution, right? So we do, if you look at our call ARG, if you go look at the eligibility criteria, you can, a principal investigator can be employed at an NGO. They can apply as a principal investigator to our programs.
Sure.
So, and then we typically do not pay the salary of the principal investigator directly. However, as part of the budget of the program, they can have personal budgets, and we have, different levels of personal budget, all the way from project associates to, much higher numbers available. So they can just pick which slot they want. Okay, or see, for example, you can have postdoctoral researchers, you can have junior research fellows, senior research fellows, you can have other folks. We just have some I would say typically in HR we have to have some sort of qualifications of those sort of roles. I think we put out different levels of roles which we where higher budget can be asked for those things, but we don't pay the salary of the principal investigators. So this is for an NGO who may have a different mix of the same, or even a Section 8 company or a research institution that might be silo registered. So we do recognize that, and that degree of flexibility is there. It's just that we don't pay the primary investigator. Now the second is, if you're looking at a PhD student, we typically call a junior research fellow or a senior research fellow. So in a PhD student in their first year or second year are considered to be junior research fellows, and there's a salary scale for that, or a fellowship scale. And then there is a senior research fellow. This is it's a well-defined scale that is there in. And certainly then what will happen is you would have a PI in one institution and a co-PI in another institution. And because those two are the anchors of that program, and then around them they can have staff who are supported by that program. So in terms of the personnel, that's how it works.
Right. So that there is a pathway there, is what you're
saying.
Yes, but you just have to construct it in a way that there are the two partners, PIs, and
correct. But it doesn't. We wouldn't pay for the PI's salary. I think if that's the question, that is not so.
I think they're not just talking about that, but talking. So it's okay. I think you answered it adequately, and that's very, very helpful. Even for me, I'm not from that sector, but it helps. I know that there is also the RDIF, right? Am I getting that right?
Yes.
And I think it pertains to a question that Rajat Garg is asking, that why are we so dependent on the state for funding? And in India, and why is it that he's lamenting that sort of industry and private corporate sector and so on are not willing to take on the burden of sponsoring R&D? So I know that through the RDIF you are trying to solve for that, right? And could you talk a little bit about that, and what is the plan there?
Okay, I think it's a very nuanced questions here. The multiple aspects here. RDIF has a slightly different goal, right? So RDIF stands for Research Development and Innovation Fund. It's a 1 lakh crore program, which is only for the private sector. Okay, and the goal there is to catalyze. Again, the keyword is catalyze. Both much larger co-investments from the rest of the financial ecosystem, plus catalyze research, development, and innovation in the private sector in general, right? So that is the goal of RDI at all scales, right? Whether it means deep tech companies, larger deep tech projects, which can be growth capital, and even larger companies wanting to do things which are very highly risky, but they don't fund it. There's nothing just India specific. Even I've worked in the US, and there also DARPA funds such research projects which are super high risky. And big companies do get funding from these entities, right? So, which are government entities. So it's the dependency on the government. Is the second part of it is there is a notion of patient capital. So RDIF, the entire fund is a capital fund. It is not a grant program. RDIF is only for the private sector. It's only for what we call TRL 4 and above, which means translational research and above. It should have achieved some degree of maturity. So you want to commercialize, translate it, and then scale it up. And it should have a whole bunch of risks, and it's not meant for run-of-the-mill research and development. It's meant for something which is breakthrough and path-breaking, things of that nature. So again, we wanted it to be patient capital, because then you may not, in some cases, you may want more time versus more money, right? So sometimes we want money that is willing to be patient in various ways. Your time to first revenue might be longer. Think of drug development and so on. Sometimes you may need both patience and you might need a lot of capital. Sometimes you might just need the patience and less capital, but even that is not available. So our goal was to fill that very high risk gap as well as the patience gap that was identified, and also to be catalytic, right? So our goal is to be catalytic in two ways. One is to crowd in more capital that is coming through other thing, and this is not uncommon even in the VC industry, where SIDBI and so on catalyze the emergence of the VC industry. Similarly, we are catalyzing the emergence of a patient capital asset class, which then further onward invests, and we are trying to catalyze specific type of behaviors. So hopefully that gives you a menu of what is that portion, right? Now, industry academic collaboration or
so before you go on to the other that piece. So Shiv, this is really for research that has already reached that. You have these tiers that you described so well.
Yeah.
I didn't get into that, but tier 3 or tier 4, where it is almost ready for translation or commercialization. That's where you're saying these funds are targeted at, correct?
Correct. Okay. It's even in the cabinet note and it's the rules, it says clearly it should be TRL 4 or higher. And the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office has put out an assessment framework for how do you assess for these TRLs. This technology readiness levels, or what we call tiers, was something that has been around for a long time. This was something that NASA had invented to look at the progression of technology from very raw, early stage concept or idea to all the way to a full-fledged product and so on. Right? So, but that idea of a technology readiness level, market readiness level, so there are different ways of looking at it. But generally, people use the word TRL, technology readiness level. So we expect RDI is not for very, very early stage research where things are not, where you don't even have a prototype, you just have a glint of an idea. That's not what RDI is.
That is actually part of your own, the captive 50,000 crore fund that you have, correct?
Yeah. So basically, we're using different instruments. So we're using grants for the lower levels of technology maturity. And where we, especially grant is where I'm giving an entity money, and we give grants most to the not-for-profit sector, which is academia, labs, Section 8 companies, those sorts of entities. and so on, and where the technology is being de-risked, or you do early stage translation that you do, and you move it to the mid TRLs, what we call the value of death, and so on. Then at some point, the thinking is that ultimately the scale entities which are going to scale up this technology and you're going to further de-risk are going to be more commercial entities. So the idea is that at some point this thing has to pivot over from the academic not-for-profit enterprise into a for-profit enterprise and scale up. So RDI is meant for the private sector alone, only for TRL 4 and above. And it's a capital scheme and not a grant scheme, right? So we use grant mechanism for this and this. So these are complementary mechanisms. And going forward, we'll be creating more bridges across the two as well. And also, this is not like hard and fast. We'll only do TRL 0 to 4 here, and then suddenly jump. You'll sort of toss a sort of a volleyball somewhere else, and somebody will pick it up. So there, practically speaking, there will be like there's a little bit of overlap in the mid TRL levels, and this translation and to happen, and we just have to set the conditions for that to happen, and the environment and other things have to be in place, right? So our goal is to build that ecosystem in addition to giving specific types of funding.
Very powerful idea, I must say. And I interrupted you when you were starting to say something about industry academia collaboration. Do you want to go back to that?
Yeah. So the general, I think the other part of the question that you called out was, why aren't Indian industry investing more in research? Yeah. Question number one. Second is, why does government have to intervene, etc.? What is the market failure, etc.? The third part is, why don't they invest more in research in academia? So I think sometimes many of these questions are conflated. The important thing is ultimately, if we want to be innovation-driven knowledge economy and driven economy or so on, over the long run, we need more agents that do true research, true innovation, true this thing, and then that leads to intellectual property, technology-led enterprises, and so on that you see in the US and other markets. Right? So if you want to aspire to be somebody like that, you need enough centers of capability around that. In the US, you have the Stanfords, the Berkeleys, the MITs and Harvards and enough things like that. So you want vibrant centers of knowledge creation in our university ecosystem. So we want our top institutions to become in the top of the world. I know we don't necessarily talk about a community college in the same breath as we talk about MIT. We still talk about the MITs and so on. So there's nothing wrong about creating these centers of absolute excellence, world-class excellence. So that's one dimension. But we also, if you look at the US and so on, there is a lot more widening or distribution of excellence is more broad. And I used to work in a place called Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. It was ranked in the 20s and so on. But it was a fantastic place to work. It had its own entrepreneurial seal. It was a very good engineering research type of entity. It had a different heritage and history and so on and so forth. So we need a lot more of those types of entities, and we need industry to collaborate a lot more. And so I think there is also a natural journey of maturity of industry. And where we, which markets they serve, whether it's the Indian market or they serve global markets. The second is, to serve that market, what are the conditions under which they operate? How much is innovation, technology a part of that, and how much do they want to buy technology versus, build technology, right? So all of this, I think the mix of this is going to change over time, and then we want to ensure that we set the conditions right for the future.
Thank you. I think that some of what you said covers questions that have been asked on the Q&A, particularly by Abhigyan Ray, where he's talking about, the usual lament of why are we not really innovating as a corporate sector. Coming back to some specific questions, I think you already covered one of these questions. You did say that even as a foreign national working in an Indian institution in India, you are eligible to apply, right?
Yeah, especially for OCIs, overseas citizen of India. If you're a full-time staff member, there are many professors in the institutions, whether it's public or private, you can apply. Now, if you're a completely foreign national, but not even an OCI or an overseas citizen of India, I think there are a few more frictions that we have to iron out, but we have, on occasion supported such individuals as well. But we want to make India a more vibrant place. I mean, many of us went and studied in the US and we're back here. So we need to make India a more inviting place. And we are working with the Ministry of External Affairs and so on as we go forward on creating a far more vibrant ecosystem and also India going global in terms of its presence.
Sure, sure. Again, moving slightly jumping across these questions, so don't mind. There's a question from Saket Chaudhary. He says, I wanted to know what are ANRF's mandate on making data open access going forward, particularly in the light of AI models being data hungry and data from India being scarce, particularly in the field of life sciences. Do you have a point of view on open access?
Yeah, I think I think data is an interesting question. On one hand, India is one of the largest generators of data for many of the global companies, just because of the size of our population, and it is in fact training a lot of the models and so on. And India is one of the larger user base for large language models. So that's one end of the spectrum, and at the same time, that has questions on privacy and other things which my colleagues in MIT are taking notice of. But we have programs, for example, AI for science and engineering, where we have put a mandatory ANRF open license. And that is modeled on an MIT license, which for folks who may understand this area will know that it's one of the most permissive licenses. So we are, and the output of that entire program, where we are investing between 800 to 1,000 crores, will lead to models and data sets that are completely open. And AI for life sciences and bio is one of the tracks of that. So we are going to be awarding a bunch of projects in that space. So some of the projects are going to be building models. Some of the projects are going to be a combination of building models and data sets. Some of the other projects are going to be data sets. Everything we create will be open in that program. Similarly, we have a drone programs where all the designs are going to be open. So we are in the process of creating public goods in many of these. And the ANRF open license is available for anybody to examine and take a look at. And that is available. So in our default IP model is where IP rests with the grantee institution. Okay? Now, whether that's a private institution or a public institution, it rests with the grantee institution. That is, again, similar to what the Bayh-Dole Act in the US is in terms of the position it takes. And then they can make arrangements of, sort of licensing and so on. So, but coming to your data thing, we will be doing more in terms of opening up data sets, especially for research in the health and medical area. So we are in conversation with different parts of our health ecosystem, including the AIMS ecosystem, the ICMR ecosystem, the DBT ecosystem, and others. And we want to start somewhere, but then over time, there'll be other health and other ecosystem things which we'll make open for research. But it's going to take a bit of time, but we will look at different ways of doing that. Health and agriculture are two areas where we are taking.
I want to pick up a different question yet again, and I think I know the answer because I think you're very focused on this, but I'm going to ask the question for everyone's benefit. I think Monia Achari, who asked the question about the foreign national eligibility, is saying, I worked for a long time within the UK higher education system, and I've been a grant holder and so on. The social impact of our research was measured in distinct manner and presented publicly. I was wondering if ANRF encourages the recording of such impact, and what is the public sharing of it?
Excellent question. I think we have just put out a framework, an impact assessment framework, which is out for public comment, and I would encourage your viewers to take a look at that and share their comments with us. It's the feedback time frame is still open. So there we look at impact as a multidimensional thing. Impact is something that takes time to have. So we are taking a nuanced view, and impact can be looked at as social, economic, as well as scientific impact, right? Scientific and technology impact. So that's the viewpoint, and impact through education, impact through societal benefit, and so on. And we are in our, at least ANRF, we have a public portal called the Prison Portal, ANRF Prison Portal, where all the projects we have funded since 2010 or so is available, and the outputs, etc., are available on that portal. Of course, can we make it better? We can indeed. And more recently, we have started using AI. Just in the latest cohort of grants which I'm giving, we have just started a process of taking the abstracts from those projects that I've just funded about a month back. We are converting that using AI to create posters, 1-minute videos, and so on in a more consumable form. So yes, we have a portal that has all the data from 2010 onwards. If you ask, have we done the best we can in terms of articulating what the societal impact is from all of these? No, not yet. But we now have an impact assessment framework, and we are starting to take steps in terms of doing a lot more AI-driven. We are also asking principal investigators to come out, be a lot more social, put out webinars, and so on. So we are doing a large campaign of getting our folks out there and talking about their research a lot more, right? So these are a few steps we are taking, but if there's some specific things here, the person is asking, I'd like to know a bit more.
No, thank you. You've been very detailed and specific in your answers, and I think people will find them very useful. At least they will feel more curious and follow up and see where they can. Moving to kind of winding this down, my friend Subra, KR Subramaniam, is asking, what has been the response to ANRF from the beneficiary ecosystem? Does it meet your expectations, Shiv? And what can potential recipients do better?
First, thanks to Subra, and also thanks to the FAST team for being a partner with us in our journey through. And look, I think it's been a fantastic ride I've had. I've been in my job for about 15, 16 months now. And, I think the biggest service that I can do is get money out of the door fast. When I used to be in private sector, we focus on getting money in the door. Here, we are focused on getting money out of the door. And, it just like in good operations person, you have to understand the processes, figure out where the bottlenecks are, unblock them systematically, speed up processes and make processes shorter, things that are paper. We have rooms full of paper here, and, I'm trying to get rid of all of them and convert everything into electronic processes. So I think there's a lot of activity around streamlining processes and so on. And one of the things I've learned both from our researchers and the grantee population is everybody is quite hardworking. There's a lot of aspiration and energy in the community. We just have to give it the right resources and environment to make an impact. And that's one thing I feel. And especially the newer generation of researchers who have bold ideas, they want to be a lot more ambitious. We just need to give them more ways of expressing. Similarly, I have wonderful officers here. Staff there extremely hardworking. I think the picture that we have of government, when you come in and see it, first time, I'm not saying just to please my colleagues here, but they're incredibly hardworking, and most of them are quite hardworking and dedicated to have highest levels of integrity. But it's some of these systemic things that things are done in a way. There's a way of the system works that sometimes goes against them. So I think if we set a few things right, we think that my first job is to streamline and make it easier to do science in India. That's the number one thing. And then get resources out of the door so that and then next thing is to both the intrinsic resources that government invests, as well as if we can inspire a lot more resources to come in to drive that. And that's where we like to have an open invitation for partnerships to partner with us. And then we will provide all the due transparency, the impact assessment and all of that. And you will see us partner with different parts of government to keep expanding the pie in some sense, right? It's not just my ANRF core budget. I'm already partnering with many of our departments to expand the pie. Similarly, we are partnering with external foundations to align and again broaden the pie. We will do the same for a lot more international entities and so on. And and as we get the whole of government together, whole of society together, we will start doing. We'll become the implementing entities for very large programs of the government in specific sectors. going forward as well. So you will see us, I keep joking that picture abhi baki hai. Whatever you're seeing is just the trailer, and it's not even the beginning of the beginning.
So there are people who are also reacting saying हमने ये picture पहले भी देखा है. So we have a question from Sonali Gupta saying, you have grand ambitions and stellar people, but several initiatives like this in the past have then gone on to not be so successful. So she's saying, do you have an example of one thing that you are doing differently based on learnings of what didn't work in the past?
See, I think the past is important to learn from, but not to be constrained by. And I'm fully conscious of several experiments. So first of all, ANRF itself is an institutional innovation. We are like a trust into which we are a long-lived body. You cannot get rid of my body easily. You need 75% of the Indian legislature to vote to repeal the existence of ANRF. Second is we are funded on the long term, right? So we are not bound by the vicissitudes of budget coming in and going out. So I have, even though I have to have financial discipline to forecast and do the right things, if I do some basics right, we'll have more stability of funding rather than a start-stop of funding, which has plagued the Indian million for a while. And then second is we will be setting best practices in place and driving some of those things and institutionalizing things so that irrespective of who is in my seat, the things will go on in terms of those best practices and institutionalize what National Science Foundation is and so on. It's an institution building, it's a nation building activity. Look, India has built ISRO, India has built DRDOs and all these things. Why can't we build the NRF, right? So I think, please keep your skepticism. But, I have shown that I can be an institution builder in the past. And, I think, and also the government has given me the due powers as secretary level officer to be able to draw in partnerships and so on. So I think I would always be mindful of the skepticism and say what is relevant skepticism. What exactly am I doing here? So
Sure.
We have shown that earlier money was hard to get out of the door, but we have shown examples that we have actually pushed money out of the door. And in fact, I've finished up half my budget within the first 2 months. Okay, so now, and in fact, RDI was announced in November. We have also already sent out money out of the door, and we'll be announcing a lot more second level fund managers. So we've already shown proof of concept that we can do things. And in fact, when private sector comes to my door, I ask them, can you move as fast as us? Can you move as fast as me? And we give them the challenge. And anyway, so look, I think it's a friendly competition, but I think it's important to be skepticism, but I think I'd rather learn from where exactly the source of that skepticism is, because I don't want to, again, reason by analogy. Show me by first principle what am I not doing. Okay, I'm happy to fix that, coming back to the beginning, what we started.
No, more power to you, Shiv. What you're doing is true nation building, and we are all very excited and very happy to support and be optimistic about the future. I do think that this is a turning point, and we have to all grab this opportunity. It doesn't come every day. I want to end by asking you, Shiv. There are a bunch of other questions, but I'll try to get your inputs for those individuals later. If you had to do a before and after, or maybe not even a before, you personally, what would you like to see specifically happen? If you were to paint the picture 5 years out, 10 years out, you pick. What would you like to describe us? What would India look like as a result of all the things that you are doing?
See, take yourself back to 75 years, 80 years when the National Science Foundation was set up, or then about 60 years back when DARPA was set up. And now look at where the US is right now, right? And now other institutions like UKRI, now India and UK and other places are being set up and are trying to catch up faster as well. So look, I think we are not starting from a completely empty wicket. So we have seen how USMA works, how things work in Australia. So I've been fortunate to have operated in the US, so I know the US systems. I've gotten funding from all those guys. I've seen the systems in Australia. I was the chief scientist there. So on one hand, by observing the various systems and understanding the challenges in India, we are proceeding forward. So India has the potential to be a research and innovation powerhouse. That's my vision for the future of India. So what does powerhouse mean? It means an ecosystem that is super vibrant. That is, it's an excellent place for doing research. There is a flow of investments. The right investments happen, the right people get supported, and collaborations happen. There's more organic sharing of ideas. Then new entities emerge, whether those are startups or deep tech companies emerge. Ultimately we would like to see $100 billion, $1 trillion companies emerge out of India, serving the world. And that's one dimension. Similarly, we'd like to see Nobel Prizes out of India, the topmost prizes in every discipline come out of India, right? So it is not a coincidence that the same place that churns out the largest number of Nobel Prizes also churns out the topmost trillion-dollar companies and so on, right? So we need to ultimately develop. That's a long-term, our Viksit Bharat type of thing, but we have to break it down into 5-year periods. And I have much more basic things. Get money out of the door now. Get an environment of doing more vibrant things. Get more collaborations going. Get researchers to be more social and so on. Because we believe that all of these are necessary, but not individually sufficient factors to driving both creation of new knowledge, knowledge building on knowledge, great science emerging, great science converting to deep tech, and then ultimately deep tech impacting society and the technology diffusing through society, right? So that's the thought process. And then all of this, what drives the innovation. So now, of course, you can look at metrics like, hey, I want to go from 0.5, 0.6% of GDP to ultimately 3.5% of GDP over a long period of time. But then how do I get a ramp up? It means that I'll have a CAGR of over 25% for the foreseeable future of this, right? So I think, and how do I drive that, and how do I catalyze? Government cannot be doing all of this. We have to continue to catalyze the private sector, non-governmental sectors to come together, and so that's what we're trying to be, an integrator and a catalyst.
Shiv, thank you so much. You used the wicket analogy. I don't think we could have had a better captain and an opening batsman to lead off ANRF. All the very best to you, and hopefully we'll get a chance to discuss progress in a few years or months along the way. Thank you for making the time to be on this J3 Dialogues. This was our 8th episode. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And again, Shiv, all the very, very best to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll request all your viewers to consider following us on social media of their choice, and be in touch. And I have a lot to learn from you and your colleagues, Pramath, and how you have done great things.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you, Shiv.
Thank you. Goodbye.